This did not begin in February 2020. History is familiar with this moment, the moment when a declining great power, sensing the narrowing of its strategic window, moves to reshape the international order before its capacity to do so evaporates entirely. We have seen this before. In 1914, Imperial Germany faced the same calculation: act now or watch relative power drain away. In 1937, Japan made its choice. In 1941, Germany made its final commitment. Russia is not new to this dilemma. What is clarifying is the logic becoming visible beneath the noise. To understand Russia's current trajectory, one must first understand what Russia has lost and what it still possesses. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, leaving behind a shattered economy, a humiliated military, and a periphery of former satellite states now gravitating westward. For 30 years, Russia has watched this drift with increasing alarm. NATO expanded, the West consolidated. The post-Cold War order was not Russia's order. Meanwhile, Russia retained one irreplaceable asset: nuclear weapons, and it possessed another: geography and hydrocarbon reserves. These two facts became Vladimir Putin's foundation. He could not compete economically with the West. He could not match NATO's conventional superiority through military spending. But he could be patient. He could use energy as leverage. He could rebuild the military gradually, and he could wait for Western fatigue, Western division, and Western strategic overreach. The West, for its part, made a fundamental assumption that Russia was fundamentally weak and would remain so. This assumption was comforting. It was also flawed. Weakness and patience are not the same thing. Russia played a longer game than the West expected. Russia's current endgame is not irrational. It is coldly strategic. Putin's logic runs as follows. First, Ukraine represents not merely a border state, but a psychological and strategic buffer. A Ukraine integrated into NATO is a red line, not because of Russian aggression, but because of Russian survival calculations. From Russia's perspective, NATO on its border is not defense. It is encirclement. Whether this perception is justified by Western intentions is irrelevant to Russian decision-making. Russia perceives threat, and perception drives strategy. Second, Russia understands that time is not on its side. Russian demographics are catastrophic. The economy is sanctioned and isolated. Military modernization is expensive and incomplete. But Russia also understands that the West has its own time constraints, divided societies, competing interests, election cycles, war fatigue. If Russia can outlast Western resolve, it wins. Third, Russia has made a calculation about the nature of Western power. American military supremacy is real, but not infinite. American political cohesion is fragmenting. European dependence on American security guarantees creates resentment. The global South is not automatically aligned with the West. These are not Russian fantasies, they are observable facts. Russia believes the Western order is more brittle than it appears. Fourth, Russia understands that nuclear weapons provide a floor beneath its losses. No matter how badly the conventional war goes, escalation control remains in Russian hands. This asymmetry matters. The West cannot risk nuclear war over Ukraine. Russia can risk it. That calculation shifts everything. Consider the Peloponnesian War. Athens possessed naval supremacy and cultural dominance. Sparta possessed land power and patience. Sparta did not need to win quickly. It could exhaust Athens through attrition, watching for the moment when Athenian democracy lost will. Athens, believing in its superiority, believed it could fight on its own terms. Sparta understood the war would be decided not by tactics but by endurance. The war lasted 27 years. Athens lost. Consider also the Cold War itself. The Soviet Union was economically dysfunctional, technologically inferior, and politically ossified. Yet it persisted for 70 years, not through strength but through strategic patience. nuclear parity, and the West's inability to translate superiority into decisive action. The Soviet Union did not lose the Cold War through military defeat. It collapsed from internal decay while the West waited. Now consider Germany in the 1930s. A declining power, economically constrained by the Versailles Order, facing a closing window of opportunity, made the calculation that immediate, decisive action was preferable to slow decline. The calculation was rational, given German assumptions. The cost was catastrophic. Russia is not necessarily following the German path, but it is making a similar calculation about windows closing and the necessity of action before capacity erodes further. What usually follows when a major power commits to this trajectory: first, escalating costs to all parties. Russia will absorb enormous casualties and economic damage. The West will face military expenditure it did not anticipate, industrial mobilization it has not yet undertaken, and strategic choices it has postponed. Neither side will achieve a clean victory. Attrition will become the logic. Second, the erosion of assumptions that have held the post-Cold War order together. European nations will begin independent calculations about their security. Nuclear proliferation will accelerate Poland, the Baltics. Potentially others will seek independent deterrence. The American security umbrella will lose credibility in the eyes of those who depend on it most. Strategic autonomy will replace collective defense. Third, the weaponization of economic interdependence. Russia will use energy as leverage in Europe. The West will use financial and technological systems as leverage against Russia. This mutual vulnerability will become clearer. Neither side will achieve autarky, but both will attempt it at enormous cost to living standards and economic efficiency. Fourth, the destabilization of other regions. If the West is preoccupied with Ukraine and Europe, other powers will make moves they have long contemplated. China will test Taiwan's defenses. Regional powers will settle scores they have postponed. The restraint that American power has provided will evaporate. Fifth, the possibility of inadvertent escalation. Wars between nuclear powers do not end because one side chooses to stop. They end because both sides recognize the trajectory and step back. But the recognition does not always come. Sometimes it comes too late. What makes this moment particularly consequential is that Russia is now committed fully. The invasion of Ukraine was not a limited operation. It was a commitment to reshape the regional order by force. Once that commitment is made, Russian strategic logic dictates deeper involvement, not retreat. Retreat would signal weakness to potential challengers. It would validate Western intervention strategies. It would suggest Russian power is not what Russia claims. So Russia will continue. It will absorb more sanctions. It will endure more casualties. It will dig in for what may become a generational confrontation. The West, having committed to Ukrainian resistance, faces similar logic. Abandonment would signal the collapse of American credibility in Europe and globally. So the West will continue as well. This is not a situation that resolves through negotiation in the near term. Both sides have made commitments that prevent easy off-ramps. Both sides believe time is running against them, which accelerates the timeline rather than stretches it. Both sides possess the capability to inflict unacceptable costs on the other, which prevents decisive military victory, but not the attempt to achieve it. This is not unprecedented. That is precisely what makes it dangerous. History has written this chapter before. The chapter where great powers locked in competition over shifting spheres of influence gradually escalate commitments beyond what either side originally intended. The logic is rational at each step. The outcome is frequently catastrophic. Russia's endgame is not mysterious. It is becoming clear because Russia has decided to stop obscuring it. Russia intends to dominate its periphery, to restore itself as a great power, and to challenge the Western-led order. Whether Russia succeeds or fails, the attempt has already reshaped the world. The costs measured in blood and treasure and in the erosion of the international order that enabled prosperity will be paid by all parties for decades to come. History has already answered the question of what happens when declining powers make such commitments. The answer is rarely satisfactory to anyone.